What's up, everyone? Carmen here with Pittsburgh White Schwartz. Over the past weekend, I played in Nationals, which was online through Heart of the Cards for WGP, and I managed to make top 8 playing Prisma Illya, which is maybe a JP deck that you weren't thinking about when you were thinking about the current meta. I had some reasons for doing that, and I'll get into that in a second, but it was a really great time. Shout out to all my opponents. It was a really great time being able to play into people from different scenes. It's always awesome. And shout out to Human, who was able to win again from Strictly Broken. Super sick. So yeah, just jumping into why I chose Prisma Illya. So for online events, I personally prefer low interaction decks. I am more of like a tracking, like hyper like sort of memorization, like memorize every closed zone, super on top of stuff kind of player. And when I can't do that, I feel like very out of my element. So from when I'm playing online and online events, I really prefer decks that really don't care about that information as much. That information is always important no matter what you're playing, but with decks that don't interact with your opponent on like a very granular level too much, especially like during the combat step as much, that's a really big thing for me. So a lot of decks were immediately right out. I didn't want to play 8 Standby Mushoku, even though it's a great deck, even though some people might say, oh, that's not too interactive, you're just putting out stuff. For me, it's sort of like just not my kind of jam for these kinds of stuff. A lot of stuff was right out. The other thing was deck speed and deck manipulation was a really big thing for me. When you're in a long event, you're playing a lot of rounds, having really good control over your deck state is really important. And so things with Ozza went to the top of the list. So Illya and Hololive Choice Pants, the two things that I like came down to very quickly, both because they play Ozza. Ozza is the most like over centralizing, powerful deck control tool that you can possibly run, in my opinion. So a lot of things were just like right out. The other thing I was thinking about when going into Nats, high chance of playing into standby multiple times over the day. And there were other strategies similar to Illya where like it's sort of non-interactive and then you like burn out at the top kind of deck, but they weren't hitting high enough power numbers. Like I was one who thought that 8-bar Princess Connect was actually going to come back for a brief amount of time after Symphogear left the meta because it could challenge standby while being non-interactive, but it turns out the finisher at the top with that deck just isn't good enough. So that deck sort of went out. But Illya actually has good enough anti-standby tools. They really turn on at level 2 where you can challenge boards, and then once you get to level 3, you actually have Kuro Bomb, which is like one of the best like sort of like infinite value kind of engines that you could play. It heals and kills stuff. I'll get to it when I get to the card. But it was like just good enough while also obviously Illya, if you know the level 1 combo, you rip a ton of extra cards. So you don't mind going under when you unfortunately have to. So that was that. And then 8-Pants Illya lets you slam a climax pretty much every single turn. And it's probably the best 8-Pants deck that currently exists. And even if you don't slam, or even when you do, you have 24 plus soul triggers, depending on how you build your deck. My deck specifically had 24 soul triggers. 24 soul triggers for a global soul deck is a lot. That's standby levels of soul triggers. So you're swinging for like 2 or 3 a lot more often than other global soul decks when you happen to like whiff climax. But really good for keeping damage up in a deck like this where you're really just trying to push while keeping your deck state as good as possible. So you get the cancels you should, and then you burn out with a really big finisher. So you got those fail safes in there, sort of fail safes and damage, really nice. The other thing that's unique about Illya that I was thinking about was that Illya creates checkmate situations versus lingering level 1 and 2s. And what leaves lingering level 1 and 2s more than any other style of deck? 8 standby deck, because they have the 1/1s, especially Mushoku. If that Eris is out there forever, that Eris is just giving your opponent pluses, giving them mill and stuff when they play standby. They're incentivized to keep cards like that around. You're playing into Hololive and stuff like that, they'll have lingering Ozasas, they'll have Ducks just sitting out, like Subarus, whatever. There's a lot of like weird lingering level 1 and 2s in the meta right now that you can expect to see. And Illya into that stuff, especially level 1s, like against DBG 2 Soul when they're playing down the Sora, especially like if you go to 3 first, which is what you want in that kind of matchup, that can just be checkmate because of the way that the Illya finisher works. And I'll get to that when I get to the card. So moving into the deck, here's the deck list. As always, deck list in the description on Encore Decks. If you're just here for the deck list and you listen through my whole 5-minute ramble there and you just want the list, leave us a like on the way out. That really helps us out. So pretty directed, pretty simple. Our one-ofs, I'll get into them. They're not anything super crazy. We are looking to play the game and play our finisher. We're looking to get cards into our hand. It's a very stereotypical level 1, level 3 kind of deck. The only finesse here is the Ozasa and the Free Fresh, just something that Illya has right now that not a lot of decks do in Japanese. So let's get right into the cards. One of the best parts about Illya Ilya right now, you get to run 6 chasers. This one is literally Goblin Slayer, same text. Your opponent can't side attack it as long as you have 5 or more cards in hand. It's a level 1 3K, and then it's a chaser. And then we pair that with 2 of this Miyu, which is a 3500 chaser. It's level 0, so your opponent can side it, so it's not as good, which is why we're only running 2. It also has a really bad drawback. If your opponent has 3 or more climax cards in their waiting room, you have to rest it. So this card actually becomes super dead later in the game unless your opponent's just refreshed. So you can't even play it as a chumper, which is why we're only playing this at 2. It actually becomes more dead than the Rin, even though the Rin is gem trait, so you can't pick it up with the Azusa, or Azusa only grabs magic trait. This is one of the only whips in the deck, but we play 4 because we want to see this early, and that's why we're running 6 chaser. Other level 0 here, this is our other plussing slot, bringing us to 10 quote-unquote plussing slots. This is the Kuro Riki. It is a true search Riki, level 1 or lower. We typically use this to grab our Miyu combo to play ahead. We can use it to grab the Miyu chaser if we didn't open that, if we need to challenge a big lane. And then it has a nice bonus effect as long as you have experience 2 or higher, which if you don't, the entire deck doesn't work at 1, so you must have experience 2. We have some assurance cards on the list for that. We can give 1,000 power anywhere, including ourselves. So it's a nice little bonus effect. Helps us edge out lanes, especially against standby, maybe challenge stuff, even though we're not really that kind of deck. It is a nice little bonus effect while also being search Riki. Search Brainstorm. We unfortunately do not have a self-rest salvage Brainstorm in Prillia, which would be really, really nice for the deck. I think it might be too insane. That's why they gave it search, because giving recurrence to Prillia with that level 1 Miyu combo would be really, really disgusting. But it's like Really Brainstorm from Bang Dream, so it's 500 anywhere, beginning of your climax phase. You can give it to itself. And then it is a self-tap search Brainstorm for Phantasm or Magic. So it hits on every card in the deck. There's no weird things with, your normal stuff like your combo, like your Brainstorm and stuff like that. It's only on the Oz, so that you have like magic only great thing. Moving into our one-ofs at level 0, one of this Shinji Climax swap. This is another one of our non-magic cards. We cannot pick this up off our Azusa. However, it's really important, so we can grab it when we hit extra pants on Brainstorm. Good card, it comes in our hand, we just hold on to it. Some of our only quote-unquote climax assurance, because we are playing 8 pants. And it's also a level 0 clock bomb, so it can remove big fat level 0 stuff that our chasers otherwise can't beat over, and then it's gone from the field, so then our chasers can run around freely. So good synergy with our level 0 game, and good climax assurance later. Good scalable level 0. This is a card that they don't let you buy. It is really hard to find this Kuro. It's sold out almost everywhere, despite being just like a rare. It is a 500 frontal assist on both turns, and it is a spammable salvage, add magic character to hand, discard Brainstorm. So this is another magic locking, but it does give us that good grave access. Lets us add back Azusa, lets us add back pretty much all of our level 2 game plan cards. Again, the only things it can't grab is the Rin chaser, which we won't need, and the climax swap. We're gonna have to grab that up either when we draw it or when we go into our deck. But yeah, really, really important. Prillia is really suffering for grave access, as this is one of the only cards that lets you do that. It's also one of our only good stockouts that can go 2 down in the early game. We have we can Riki and then we can Brainstorm, but that requires 2 cards. It's like a 1 card, 2 stock out, mill our first deck, get that out of there, because otherwise we don't have any other good ones. We're pretty costless. So it's a really, really important card for the deck. If you want to try it, this card's really important. If you don't have it, proxy it. It makes a massive difference to the deck. Lastly, we have the Kuro Climax Stitch Salvage. This is also magic traded, grave access, super limited. So any grave access card, even if it has magic tax, this card's so old that it has a minus 500 power demerit for grabbing magic trait, because this card was around when people actually played standard and not Neo standard. That's some wild stuff. But yeah, really important consistent card, because we're playing 8 pants. Our deck's not going to refresh and we trigger a pants. We have this in hand, we pick this up, and it turns in any card in our grave in the following turn. Adding pants to hand in a deck like this, even when you don't have this card, is really good, because it's just a card you filtered out with Azusa. Any plussing trigger would have that interaction, but just something to know. Moving into level 1, the Miyu combo. This is a new combo in the Phantasm Extra Booster, quote-unquote new, set's been out for a while. During your turn, gets 1,000 power, so with the climax down, it's 6-5. Okay power level, not the best. As long as you have experience 2, when you have the level 1 pants down, you can discard any card. So again, that lets us, filter out pants from our pants triggers from previous turns, or pants that we trigger during the battle step, to check up to 3 cards on the top of your deck, and you add any 3 characters from your deck. The way this deck is built, it will add anything. Anything is Phantasm or Magic. Everything is Phantasm or Magic. There's no weird stuff here. You can add any card that you reveal in the top 3. No weird stuff there. So it's a card that can go +2. It's a costless combo. On attack, they can go +2. That's insane. The combo does have drawbacks, but in this deck, it doesn't mean too much. Like, a card in Prillia is usually good enough, just because we want to turn that card into mill, and we run so many copies of our important cards, because we're sort of cutting the fat. The one-ofs that we have are just really important stuff that we can't live without. So adding those 3 random cards isn't as bad in this deck specifically, but the combo's really, really strong. The raw hand advantage helps you bust through standby, because even if you're losing your board off turn, unfortunately, you're crashing in, you're still adding so many cards to hand that you can keep up the gas, keep on the pressure, keep slamming climaxes, keep refueling hand when getting to the end of the game, because our combo at end game is hand intensive, not stock intensive. But hand's more important, so a combo like this is at a premium. Level 1's Azusa, most important card in the deck. This and Refresh is the main reason I decided to play the set. It's an experience 2 Azusa for any magic. You might have seen in the deck overview that I ran 5. You see right here, I'm running 5. White Schwartz card limit is 4. What's up with that? So the Aprilia Extra Booster reprinted cards with different names. So they are effectively, as per the rules, different cards. You can run up to 8 Azusa. I'm running 5. I don't think you need to run more than that, but you could run up to 8. Being able to run that many Azusa, anything over 4, brings you to like absurd levels of consistency. It puts you at that quote unquote like obnoxious level of deck speed. So you can hit what you need to constantly in terms of deck state. You can like always get down to your free, always have mill on hand. Like a lot of the time, you want to have like 2 of this card filling in your hand. And because you run 5, you can like do that without selection. It's really, really insane. And that's one of the main reasons I want to play Aprilia, because you can play 8 Azusa. Crazy. People who have played the game for a long time probably understand like how insane being able to run Azusa in general is. And then on top of that, being able to run more than 4 and sort of break deck building convention, how good that can be. Just for people who maybe don't understand how crazy that can be, or maybe they're just dipping into Weiss, coming in with Hololive because they see the Subaru. Don't see why so many people are playing it. Why would you want to do that? It's a really, really powerful profile for deck control and hand filter. Being able to run up to 8 of this is also the main reason why we don't need the pan support, which is notably missing from this deck. Because we can run more of this, we don't actually need the mid-battle discard outlet for our climaxes. We'd rather have them in our hand and make that choice in battle steps, so that if we're not going to refresh, we can then play this down, filter out the pans, turn that into mill, and then get down to our 5 or less free fresh card, which we'll talk about when we get to level 2. Moving on to level 1, some tech cards. We got this Sarah. It is if you have experience 2, which again, the whole deck doesn't work if you had experience 2. It's going to be 11-5 against level 2s. You have the climax down 12-5. That should clear or at least challenge any 2-2. Standby can throw at you. Then it also has an amazing consistency effect on play. We can rest another of our standing Phantasm characters, so only characters that are Phantasm, which is all the extra booster cards. So most of the characters in our deck. And then we choose a card in our waiting room, swap it into our level zone. So make sure that we hit our experience. Lastly, at level 1, this 1/1 Taiga. This is like the card that brought me to this kind of global soul deck into standby versus something else. Because like obviously like Ruche gets big and stuff like that, but this is like more traditionally annoying, I think, and is also well positioned into Hololive, funnily enough. So it's an on-play blink that's also an Adachi. So you can blink the big Ruchia, Adachi another Ruchia, and then beat over the Ruchia that you blinked, because now it's down from 15-5 to 13. So it has a really annoying interaction there for Hololive, but it's just better than a normal Adachi because it has extra use, an extra line of text that can come up on a card that's already your tech card. So it's like 2 tech cards in 1 slot. And the 1 stock premium, again, for a stock light deck, we don't need stock for a finisher. So paying the extra 1 for like an Adachi, even if you just want to blink something, like isn't that big of a deal. Moving on to level 2s, this Miyu. This Miyu is the star of level 2. It is a level 3 killer, so 1300 on turn when it attacks level 3. But if you're playing the deck correctly, have experience 3, it has hand on core. So it turns all that junk that we add. You can discard any character card, so it's not like discard a magic or anything like that. We can ditch our Rins that we add to our hand, since those are just gem trait, and keeps this card on board so that we can challenge our opponent's board again. It's good against early plays, good against standby. We have extra pumps in the set. We can get this up to 14, 15, whatever. We have a climax down. This is the star of the level 2, and it's the main reason why at level 2, you know, you could really start to challenge and board break with Aprilia. At least force your opponent to like bleed some resources so they're not like completely being let run wild if you're forced to go under. Really, really important card, and that's why we're playing 2 of it. Prisma Illya has a free fresh. 5 or less card in its deck. You refresh your deck, and then instead of drawing, you give a character 3k cross turn. So if you have the spammable down or whatever, this is like an 11k on front of that, which is like fine. You can like maybe defend that. Maybe your opponent is de-incentivized from running into it. The main thing here is that this is a free fresh. Free freshes are inherently broken. These 2 are 1 5 or less free freshes because it just breaks everything, because it's technically a 1 cost heal that also has an additional effect, that plus 3k cross turn. So like we create like a 2/1 maybe cross turn plussing card that healed us 1 while also like bettering our deck state. Like when you look into the like card mechanics behind the 2/1 free freshes, they always come out broken. They're inherently broken profile. The second line of text is flavor text. I've never used that effect ever. It's bad, not a real line of text. I have the alt art pictured here. That's just for promos. Some of these cards do have old promo arts that you can pick up. They're also ungodly expensive compared to the extra booster cards that are already expensive. Moving on, last card at level 2, the anti-change counter. This is the exact same profile as ReZero. This is probably the best anti-change counter profile to ever exist in White Schwartz because the cost is spread out. So for overall, pay 2, discard a magic character from your hand, sack a character from your stage, send one of your opponent's higher level characters, their current level, to the bottom of their deck. So it hard removes their character, they lose that attack, so you're effectively anti-damaging them at level 2, and then you've spread out your cost in such a way that you can, if you stay at level 2, if you can get this card back, because we have a salvage, will filter brainstorm, you're adding cards to hand, so like you're not going to be down on resources for doing this, you can threaten it again. So that's the scariest part about these cards, is like it doesn't hurt your opponent too much to do it, but it's a like super setback for you if you're running into a card like this, and that's why a card like this is strong. Only one, just because actually playing multiple, like you're cutting into a lot. It's mostly the hand cost, like ditching 2 cards effectively, you're ditching this, you're ditching an extra card from hand. That's probably too much. So we're only running 1. Being able to add this publicly to hand and being able to tell our opponents this is re-0 anti-change counter profile is even more of a threat than normal anti-change counter, so it will cause our opponents to play around it even if we don't have to use it. So a really, really powerful tool for a deck to have. On to level 3s. Miyu, early play healer. Early play stock healer, experience 5 or greater. It's an 11/5 instead of just an 11, so it's the Mesmerizing Goddess profile, and it's 500 power bigger. You won't have any problems with like traits and stuff like that. It's just 4 more characters in your deck on the field, or a ditch a card early play heal. Again, like pants, you're adding pants to hand. You can ditch a pants with this, all that normal synergistic stuff with the deck. It's just an early play healer that swings big, so you can challenge boards while not cutting into your resources too hard, and then you don't have to worry about a weird early play condition where you can't meet it because you canceled too much or something. Because when you're free freshing, and if you're in those good deck states and you're doing really well, you're keeping your stock clean, and you happen to like triple cancel, and then you can't play your early play, and it's like, oh, I really wanted to heal, I really wanted to sandbag. So it doesn't stop you from doing that. So good, consistent early play. The Kuro Bomb, I talked about this briefly. This is one of the reasons I wanted to play this over other like aggressive, non-interactive burnout decks, is that this is like the ultimate waiting card. If our opponent isn't ready to die, because Prillia, our finisher, when we get to it in a little bit here, is so intensive on our resources, notably our hand, we are probably not going to have a follow-up turn. So if we want to wait, we can't like pre-field our finishers or do 2 turns of finisher very effectively, but this card's like the ultimate waiting cards, because it's a bomb that when we reverse our opponent, and as long as our opponent's on level 4 somehow, we're going to be able to reverse them, and then when we get a reverse, we can pop this card back to our hand. So we create an open lane, so we're forcing our opponent to overswing if we're in those waiting situations or whatever, or even if we don't want that, we can leave it there, we're giving it the option, and then on our finisher turn, if we need another level 3 swing, because triple Illya is a myth, it almost never happens, you almost always double Illya, and it's still a crazy combo, we can swing this in first, clear our opponent's big lane, because we want to like have our Illyas to like side and stuff too, and then this card can pop back to our hand, and then we can ditch it for a combo. So it helps us, it gives us like a playable swing on board that then mid-combat pops back to our hand that we can then ditch for our really hand-intensive finishing combo. It's a super sick interaction, and also just the card's great into standby. It's a healer, like the ultimate Dirtle card. And this profile is like super insane. It's unique to Prisma Illya. They're the only set that has exactly this card and it works in exactly this way. So it was a big draw for me wanting to pick this set. Lastly, Illya finisher. This combo's insane. An on-play heal, and then on attack, pay 1, ditch any 2 cards as long as you have experience 6. But I keep talking about experience. You're usually going to level 1 of these and a Kuro Bomb if you can, but you can sort of stack your experience. You can level 1 of these, you can level 2, you can level 1. You only need red like at the end, so 2 level 3s and like a Rin. That's why we're running so many extra copies of level 3s. We can hit experience 6. We don't need to have full board. We don't have to have anything weird like that. Just experience 6. Slam 2 copies of this down. Then on attack, we pay 1, discard 2 cards from our hand, any 2, so they can be pants, whatever. We can burn our opponent for 2 and moke our opponent for 2. So look at up to 2 cards from the top of their deck, do whatever we want to them, put them back, delete stuff we don't like, remove climaxes, put them back. In any order. The any order part is really important. So when we need to push for game, we do the burn 2 blind, and then we check the top 2, and we get our swing for 3 or 4, because again, we're running a lot of soul triggers, so we might be swinging for 4. We get that sort of extra insured swing for 3 or 4, push damage. And the thing about Prillia, right, is the second from 3-0, your opponent eats a swing for 3. If they've left lingering level 1s and level 2s, they are almost for sure dead because of the way you can finesse this combo against specifically level 1s. So if you side a level 1, you can burn for 2 blind if you want, and then mocha for exactly 2, because you're swinging for base 2. Hopefully you don't trigger in that lane if you're trying to confirm stuff. You're exactly 2, and then you just burn for 4 and you win after you stick the 3. You can, if you have 2 lanes of it already, you swung for 3 in the first lane, you can side, check top 2 first, burn for 2, you know that 2 sticks, you side for another 2 if they eat that, it's game, and then you have another way to side to confirm game again. So it puts your opponent in these checkmate situations, and you don't even mind if it's 1s or 2s, because depending on your triggers, again, high trigger count, depending on what happens, you still have a lot of options to like finesse your opponent with like ordering these effects in the exactly the right way to kill them. This card into like really small deck states can be like really disgusting in how you can like just sort of just destroy your opponent's deck, almost in the same way as mochas and stuff like that. It's like, you know, it's just mocha on your opponent, but you know, you're Prillia, you don't have a follow-up turn after you throw this card down. So just something to keep in mind. Is like once this card hits the board, the game's over. So the best you're going to be able to do after that is maybe shove up a card in the back row and maybe swing 3 times for like 1/1/1 or something like that. So you really only go for game once this card hits the board. Sometimes you have to do the play where you play it as a healer in the back row and you wait and then you shove it up the next turn. The second that climax is down and you do the combo, there's no hope for you after that. Your game is over. But yeah, you're looking to play two of this and another swing is very typical, and you can kill people from level 3 very easily, like from 3-0, almost anything higher than 3-0, especially if your opponent has lingering level 1s and 2, which again in the meta right now it's pretty common even against global soul decks. It's just checkmate. The game's just over. It's a really powerful finishing combo, and unfortunately, you know, Prillia is a rare set. Not a lot of people in the West have it. It needs a lot of weird old cards and stuff like that. It took me a long time myself to sort of put the deck together, even after I bought the extra booster sort of blind, because I was like, oh, this set has all this in free fresh, it's gonna be sick. But then I had to go out and I had to hunt down a bunch of extra cards and stuff like that, and some of the cards are expensive. It can be kind of discouraging, but if you do have the opportunity to pick up Prisma Illya, I can't recommend it enough. It's a super fun 8 global soul lineup deck to play into the current meta. I think it's one of the best aggressive decks that you can be playing into the current Japanese meta, at least for now. What is the best or stuff like that changes very rapidly, so I'm not going to say anything like super definite, but I do think the deck will stand for a little longer. It's been good for a while. It's been silently good, but with Symphogear moving out, you know, a lot of the older decks that were like, oh, this is a really good aggressive deck, they move up because Symphogear was such a monster in that space, and now that it's gone, the format sort of opened up in that regard a little. And Prillia does have good tools, good enough tools to deal with the defensive meta. The one thing that it doesn't have is a really great way to deal with defensive counters. With that part, you're sort of flying blind. You gotta, you gotta abuse the fact that Illya has really good synergy with side attacks. You know, if you gotta side attack the first lane, you gotta leave an extra stock so you can do your combo first and stuff like that. But you do have better options than a deck that didn't have that sort of like side attack cheese that it can do. But, you know, that is still the one big thing with this deck that you will experience. But yeah, I think that's it. Slide at the end of all of our videos. We'll go over very briefly. Card games competitive. You want to hop on Discord, talk about Weiss, get some webcam games, check those out. Weiss Schwartz Global, Weiss Schwartz NA, buy, sell, trade. New JP reveals in Global. Definitely check that out. Weiss Fight. You want to try Prillia? I know it's hard to get. Hop on Cordex, grab the link from our description. Throw it in Weiss Fight. Jump on there. You're playing in your browser with people all over the world, and you don't got to worry about tracking down all these really hard to find cards in NA. But just in the close, again, thank you to all my opponents. Thank you for Heart of the Cards for running WGP in the West, even though we're all online. It's always a fun experience. It's always fun to play people from other scenes, other places. It's always cool to play against people that you maybe haven't seen in a while because, you know, we've all been locked into the pandemic. It's really cool to be able to, you know, it's sort of like a global tournament at your desk, since it's, you know, still got to play in regional and still got to do all that stuff to qualify for that. So always a great time. Shout out to everybody, tournament organizers, players, everyone. It's an awesome experience. And with that, Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off. We will see you guys in the next one.